Welcome to our Saturday Simulcast, holiday edition, and I got Brian Neubert and Tom Dienhart joining me. I want to thank the Union Club Hotel, the 811 restaurant. We appreciate Boiler Bar 2, Vicky Wicks, and all the folks there, that all the things that they've done for us, and we appreciate their support. And it is a Marriott Bonvoy Hotel, a great chance to visit. It is hopping down there, not only for this weekend, but obviously next weekend too, with Grand Prix and Gala Week and all the things that are going on campus. Great place to stay. Get your reservations early if you're going to eat at the 811 restaurant as well. So appreciate that. And even though it is the off season, I guess spring football is completed. Basketball is where it is. A lot going on, and I'll start with you, Tom. Purdue had an announcement yesterday that I didn't see till this morning, but Purdue obviously Jeff Brown fills out his coaching staff. Ramifications of that, and what's the takeaway from that whole situation?
Yeah, Marty Biaggi, the special teams coach, left him in a bit of a lurch. He left just a few days before spring ball started in late February for Ole Miss. And, Purdue went through spring drills without a coach devoted to special teams. Jeff Brom didn't seem too stressed about it. And they just divvied up responsibilities. And now they've got the hire that we all anticipated to be made about this point. Carl Mislowski, he's got about 9 years of experience coaching special teams. He came from Louisville, which is where he was at since, I think, 2019, working in more of a special teams analyst position down there in Derby City. Actually played football at Western Kentucky for David Elson. So the Western Kentucky connection continues to be fruitful and run very deep through this entire Jeff Brom 6-year era so far. So, yeah, obviously a guy who's familiar with the staff and has some familiarity with others as well. So there's a comfort level there, which is always nice. You like hiring people you're familiar with and And Carl's going to have his work cut out for him. I think there's some good parts to work with. We all know Mitchell Finneran's going to be one of the better kickers most likely in the conference. Purdue's got to sort out this return game. See if they can find some difference makers finally there. And the punting's got to settle down too. So Jack Ansel, Brendan Cropsey, that's your competition there. So yeah, Jeff Brom, this is the fifth new coach this cycle, if you will, for the staff. So it's complete now. Jeff Brom still got to hire a couple quality control coaches. So that's something for everybody to keep on their radar. I know those guys aren't headline news when they're hired, but they kind of play key roles behind the scenes. But by and large, this is the staff moving forward. The book is closed on spring football, and the long march till August begins. At this point, guys, there's plenty of recruiting going on. And also from a football standpoint, watch the portal. I mean, you can say that every week, right? But watch the portal now with spring football over. Purdue could have some guys jumping in. And as spring practices end across the country here, one by one, with each successive Saturday, you can see more guys jumping in the portal. Of course, Purdue's always watching for that and looking to add again a running back, an offensive lineman. They probably would take a defensive lineman too, I think. So I guess my point I'm trying to make is this roster still could have some alterations coming to it.
Brian, you look at over the years, and it's not quite the transfer portal of assistant coaches, but Jeff Brom has certainly had a lot of transition on the defensive side over his time, and now this year with some offensive changes too, with Jamarcus Shepard moving on. Just from a broad stroke of where this program is in 6 years, he's obviously got contacts. He's utilized his Louisville contacts a lot over the years, but anything you can glean from just this roster move or this assistant coach move, but also just kind of how his program is moving forward here in year 6.
Yeah. One thing to add to what Tom just said about the quality control guys, the analysts, maybe not being headline news right away. Those guys are having a funny way of being the next hires. Yeah. I think that's kind of sort of the way college football is going a little bit, is you bring in your next guys a year too early and then you bump them up when people leave. That way you got a little bit of continuity in your program. I don't know if that's the Nick Saban effect or what, but
That was David Elson, right?
Yeah,
that was David Elson. That was Neil Calloway. I guess you would say that was Ryan Wallace twice. I'm trying to think if there were any others, but that's sort of something that it seems like a lot of coaches are doing nowadays, is getting their next guys in place before they need them. In terms of, the staff turnover, I think it would be ideal if you would get a little bit of stability here and not be hiring new guys every year. That being said, I think we all know that this is a Brom run program, and a Brom run program above all else. Assistants are going to come and go. But I do think there's real value in continuity, both with your players, both with your manner of teaching. Recruiting, I think it matters, probably more now than ever, because of the musical chairs that is going to take place every winter. But I do think it would be ideal if Purdue could slow down the carousel a little bit, because it's never an ideal situation. That being said, Purdue turned over its whole defensive staff last year and had a pretty damn good season. So it's not like it's something that's a deal breaker in terms of success. I think it would just be a little bit more ideal if there was a little bit more constance there.
Yeah, Tom, Jeff Brom is, and you've hinted a couple of times about, he doesn't, you kind of make these hires as needed. You have your network. He doesn't seem to stress about them, or at least not outwardly, but that's reality from your perspective, that he's got a list of guys, and like Brian has said and you guys have talked about, that sometimes these analysts, et cetera, become your next opportunities.
Yeah, exactly right. And there has been a lot of churn, if you will, turnover during Jeff Brom's tenure. But Brian talks about, yes, continuity would be nice, but Purdue certainly made it work with, I guess, a turnstile of coaches coming to West Lafayette since 2017. Maybe continuity is overrated a little bit. As Brian said last year, a totally new defensive staff, and Jeff Brom probably had his best defense since he's been in West Lafayette. Really was the backbone of that 9-win team last year, from game one till the Music City Bowl as well. So I guess it depends on how you want to spin it, right?
Yeah.
What day of the week it is and what your mood is. How do you want to spin the story? But long story short is Jeff Brom has done pretty well in 5 years. And yes, continuity is always ideal, obviously, but he obviously has been able to make it work when he's had coaches leave and had to replace them. And here we go again, right? And the special teams job in particular, guys, has turned over. I'm starting to lose count here. Maybe this is the 5th special teams coach, I want to say. I'm not sure if maybe one guy's coached 2 years in special teams. Brian, you can help me out here. Tony Levine.
I'm trying. Tony Levine, Tom Erdahl,
Wolfhausen,
and
who
was the guy last? Marty Biaggi, and now
I think he'd be your 5th here.
The big Mislowski here.
Biaggi was there for 2 years. I think he was. I think
you're right. So it's 5 now, right?
Yeah, the very first one, Tony Levine, probably hardly was the best, right? And he left for personal reasons. But here we go. Like I said, it'll work out like it's supposed to work out. And special teams always kind of get glossed over by everybody. I'm as guilty as just about everybody else, with only focusing a lot on offense and defense. But we all know the need for having those good special teams, and like to get some difference makers in the return game. Like I said, it's a luxury if you can get them. But again, at least they have a good kicker, right?
Yeah.
We saw the value of that last year. So moving forward here, the staff is set, and the anticipation is already building toward this fall. Obviously, guys, with that September 1st game with Penn State at home.
Yeah, the Brom era has not been spectacular, certainly in special teams. I guess you could say it's been okay for the most part. Yeah, and they've not had the opportunity to have much of a return game. Don't think they haven't had a kickoff or punt return for a touchdown, and really not too many long ones. But you had a guy like Rondale Moore, which wasn't too bad for a short period of time running kicks. But anyway, that's an interesting, always something that's going to get watched here, because it can be a difference maker if Purdue can turn it into such.
Special teams, I think they reflect your depth your depth of athleticism as much as they reflect your coaching. I'm not saying coaching isn't that big a deal, but I think when you recruit at a really high level, you get more good athletes in your third and fourth teams on your depth chart, and those guys become your special teamers. And since if there's more competition in your two deep, sometimes that's where guys have to take ownership over their place on the team. And I think that's why, the teams that get the most talent typically have the best special teams. I know that's really novel to say, that the teams with the best players usually are the best at what they try to do. But I think that's where Purdue still has a little bit of ground to make up from a special teams perspective, is keep recruiting well, keep recruiting deep classes, get good transfers from an athletic perspective, get them onboarded quickly, get them out there on special teams, and upgrade that way.
Brian, the walk-ons too.
Yeah.
The
better the walk-on you recruit, the better the.
I think that's one area where Purdue can get better at too, is cultivating more and better walk-ons.
Right. Yeah. Your walk-ons aren't going to be your best athletes, but they are going to be the guys who try the hardest. A lot of the time, they are going to be the guys who prepare themselves the best, because that's their game day. I mean, that's their, the 2 or 3 kickoff returns they get in on, or the 2 or 3 kickoff coverage snaps they get per game. That's their whole week. That's what they're preparing for. So the better the walk-ons you get, the better off your special teams will be too. In a perfect world, you would have all scholarship guys out there. You would have all scholarship level athletes, but that's never going to be reality, I don't think. So the better the walk-on you get, the better your special teams are too.
Purdue used a lot of starters last year on special teams.
Yeah. That can be you have to do what you have to do to win games, obviously, but that can be a real dangerous game too, because
I don't think they wanted to, but they feel like they
made a decision to do that because they were trying to get better in coverage.
Right.
And I think it's fraught with peril if you have to do too much of that, certainly.
But you got to do what you got to do to win. Too. That's the biggest thing at the end of the day.
Yep. I think that's a clear. It is about winning, guys. We figured that part out.
Play to win the game.
What?
You play to win the game.
That is correct.
That was
all right. Winston
Berglund.
Right? All right, go ahead.
That was Herm Edwards.
Hermet. Yes.
Who'd you say it was?
You're losing it, buddy. You're losing it.
Dennis Green was the one who crowned their asses, right?
Yeah, that was.
He said it is what we are, who we say we are, or whatever.
We let him off the hook.
Yeah.
That was Dennis Green, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Against the Bears.
I've got my rants confused.
Wait. What didn't Dennis Green also do the, your record is what you say, but what it is or whatever.
That's the same rant.
Yeah, might have been all the same deal. We can go back to Lee Elia if you want. He had some classic ones. 1984, calling all the Cubs fans derelicts and degenerates, or people that won't go to Cubs games. But that's dating myself, I think, just a little bit. But
what was it? Some percentage of the country has jobs and the rest are here. Is that what he said?
Yeah, and I think Lee got shown the door not long after that, and the Dallas Green era moved on from that standpoint. Okay, Winston Berglund makes a commitment on Friday. Purdue second commitment of the 2023 class.
Oh yeah, 2023.
I don't know how we're counting the calendar these days, but the significance of such. I mean, obviously, you get a kid out of Carmel. There may be others down the road than that. Brian, I'll let you go. And then I know, Tom, you talked to the coach. Maybe you can also intimate a little bit more what kind of player Purdue's getting. But Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, this is a kid who is talented enough athletically to have gotten an offer from Michigan just off tape. South Carolina offered him. His sister swims there, I believe. But that's an SEC program that recruits at a pretty high level. So there's some athleticism there. Northwestern, Indiana offered him as well. Vanderbilt. So when South Carolina offers you, you're a pretty good athlete. When Michigan offers you, you're a pretty good athlete. When Northwestern and Vanderbilt offer you, you're a pretty good student too. So this would seem like the total package sort of guy. I think it's really important in recruiting, and I don't mean this to minimize anything, but I think it's really important to get the guys you can get. I think that gets glanced over a lot when people look at the are they getting the 4 stars? Are they getting the 5 stars? Whatever. But the good players in your state where you have an advantage, and Purdue had some advantages with Winston Berglund. His grandparents went to Purdue. Grew up a Purdue fan to hear him tell it. And they had some advantages here. And when you can close things down on the guys who are good enough to help you win, and you have an advantage with, I think that is really, really important. That's where Purdue thrived with George Karlaftis. Obviously, he had so many ties to Purdue. I think they had real advantages with David Bell. They were able to get that one done, obviously. Rondell Moore technically wasn't a in-state recruit, even though he's from Indiana, but they had advantages there. They got that one done, so on and so forth. Brady Allen was another one. It's really important for Purdue to get the guys it can get who are good enough to help you win. And that's what they've done a very good job of here the last couple of years, Winston Berglund being the latest example.
Even back to the Tiller days too, there were a number of guys that are in that, you could almost put Ryan Kerrigan in that, but also, the Jason Warners and those types of guys that make for a good program if you can get them. All right, Tom, you talked to the coach also down there, former Purdue football player, and give us a little sneak preview of what he said. I know you'll be writing something up on the site as well.
Yeah, John Hebert was a Fred Akers recruit. Got out of Purdue in '93, played offensive line, a really good guy. And obviously he's very high on Winston. And like Brian said, this is the kind of guy that, Purdue almost has to get. And it's sometimes, in the past, they wouldn't get a kid like this. And I remember for years, they could never get anybody from Carmel hardly. And Winston Berglund's a guy who's going to sort of play that Jalen Graham spot, be a safety / linebacker. Has about 4.6 speed. I'm told he's tough, plays with an edge as well, comes from a very competitive family. Brian talked about the older sister who swims at South Carolina. Winston's got a twin sister who's going to go to Texas as a swimmer. And this is a kid who wanted to get the decision behind him. Not sure if he's going to get to Purdue yet in January of 2023. They're going to discuss that and see if he can get his ducks lined up and do that. This is the kind of guy that now you want him to get in the ear of these other recruits, the ones in Indiana. Brian's talked about him and bowling over. Winston Berglund's teammate, Will Helt, be a great guy to get. There's a defensive tackle with Chittard, a big offensive tackle, Luke Burgess at New Palestine. There's another big defensive end, Mickens, from the Indianapolis area. I can go on and on, but there's some nice players in and around that Indy area. And now maybe Winston Berglund can sort of maybe be the Pied Piper, if you will, and kind of like Karlaftis was a few years ago, and try to get some of these Indiana kids to follow him to West Lafayette, because this is a nice start in state for Purdue in the class of 2023, without a doubt.
Yeah, no doubt. And that process will continue to move forward. All right, Nijel Pack, you haven't gotten a text message from this, and we're recording this on Friday, but Brian, what you talked about, it certainly has to make Purdue a little bit antsy, but you still feel like the Boilermakers are in decent shape, but who knows how the longer this goes, it can, be problematic. And our last topic of this will be NIL. Maybe that also could play into this whole situation.
Yeah.
Anything new and different?
Yeah. Obviously Nijel Pack is the Nijel Pack. I don't know why I said Nigel. I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Yeah, I did that too, probably.
He's obviously the guy Purdue wants. He's a guy who puts Purdue right back in the top 25, probably gives Purdue 2 of the top 30, 35 players in college basketball next season, probably. Should he come, he's the guy you prioritized right away. In the meantime, you can't ask a lot of other guys to wait on you. So a lot of the other options have committed elsewhere. That's going to be the nature of this silly transfer portal game that everybody's going to play every year. The longer it goes, obviously, I think the more reason Purdue has to squirm. I think Purdue is in a great spot. I think the visit went fantastic. I think everything makes sense for Purdue. Everything makes sense for both sides. But as I've said over and over again, I don't know how much sense matters anymore, because there's a lot coming at these guys right away. A lot of them didn't get recruited at this sort of level out of high school. It's easy to, look for different things at different places. I think we would be naive to not mention the fact that name, image, likeness is now basically recruiting. And there are people out there literally paying kids to come to their schools, and there's no bad guy because it's all legal. And who blames the kid if they want to go take, $150,000 to go somewhere? Perfectly legal now. How long this is going to keep up, I have no idea. I don't know if this is a sustainable market, but right now in the short term, this is the Burning Man of the NIL recruiting era. I'm sure people are offering Nijel Pack money to go there, NIL money. I don't think he's in a situation personally where he desperately needs money, anything like that. I think Purdue can be competitive in this marketplace, whether they can outdo Tennessee or Miami or any of these places where it's going to be culture to, buy players every year with NIL money. I have no idea. But as I said, the longer this goes, the more reason you have, if you're Purdue, to squirm a little bit. I still think at the end of the day, I'm saying that again. Last week I said at the end of the day over and over again. I don't know why, but I do think, Purdue wins so many categories from a basketball perspective, things like that. Their need is precisely him. It is a point guard. It is a scoring guard. It is a primary ball handler. It is exactly what he needs. He's looking for on a good team, no less. My strong suspicion is that Bruce Weber has put in a good word for Purdue as well after coaching him at Kansas State. How much that matters when people, are potentially offering you tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, I don't know, but it certainly can't hurt.
Hey, Brian, real quick, handicap the likelihood of Eric Hunter coming back to Purdue.
Well, he's obviously expressed interest in coming back to college for another year. He put out that statement, kind of declaring for the NBA, which I think the NBA requires you to do.
Yeah.
Now, so if it seems funny to people that, Travion Williams is announcing for the draft when he was a senior, I think the NBA is requiring seniors, if the possibility exists for them to come back, I think they have to declare. So that's why they're doing that. But he obviously kept the door open to come back to college basketball next year, should he so choose. Whether that's at Purdue, whether that's somewhere else, I don't know. I have a really hard time seeing Matt Painter recruiting Nijel Pack to starter minutes, starter usage, and a depth chart that basically clears out. And then if he gets Nijel Pack saying, oh, hey, by the way, we're bringing back our senior starter from last year's 29-win team. Sorry, dude. I understand there's dynamics there where you can have more than one guy, but it would just seem like a very un-Painter-like thing to do should they land Nijel Pack. If they don't land Nijel Pack, this seems like something that would make sense. But I don't know what Eric Hunter's thinking. I don't know if his thinking is coming back to Purdue. I don't know if it's going somewhere else for a year. But that's a conversation they have to have. It's my understanding was when everyone found out about this, when Eric Hunter put out his statement saying that he'd like to keep his eligibility intact to come back to college, I think that was news to Purdue the same way it was news to you and I. So it's not like this has been an ongoing dialogue. I'd suspect probably here in the last few days there's been some dialogue involved, but where that falls with Purdue, I have no idea. And we will, I guess, I'd assume it's going to be dependent on Nijel Pack. But that's just me making that assumption. I think it's reasonable to think too, oh, hey, even if you get Nijel Pack, you can bring back Eric Hunter and have two experienced quality point guards. But how did Eric Hunter play for half the season this year coming off the bench? So it's not like it would be the best situation for everybody, probably, if you recruited Nijel Pack to be your starter and then you brought back last year's starter for quote unquote depth. I don't see that scenario happening. That doesn't mean it can't. That just doesn't seem realistic to me.
We're dealing in such a realistic world, as we know, everything lines up. But no, it's I think a fair analysis. All right, Tom, I know you've been talking to some Purdue officials and looking at the NIL subject is too broad for the end of this, but I do want to hit a little bit on that, and that fact that even this week I attended an event, name, image, and likeness / internship event on Monday, where Purdue student athletes were involved. We saw Brandon Newman, Mason Gillis, Aiden O'Connell, among others there. And there was much of it had to do with a number of area businesses having tables up in the Shively Pavilion. Much of it had to do with intern possibilities, but there was some NIL stuff going on, I would assume, as well. Just the whole thing. I know that there's a lot of, or I sense there's a lot of, trying to figure out where you are with this stuff and trying to be prudent as Purdue moves and navigates its way through all this. But the collectives are becoming, they are a national story in recruiting, and certainly a challenge for any place to try to be able to keep up. Any sense that you have from that and people you've talked to as well?
I haven't really talked to anybody to get a sense where they're at. I've heard some rumblings. There's no collective as we speak. I'd have to think who's going to have something in the works here, just to keep up with the Joneses. They have done a few things where we saw earlier this week, I think on Tuesday, they released their, I guess call it a portal, if you will, with a company called Influencer.
Yeah.
Where if you have a business and you want to contact Aiden O'Connell, say, you can contact him through this portal. And that's sort of how you communicate with these people and exchange ideas. And maybe
we have too many portals right now.
Yeah.
No more portals.
So there's that. And we've seen guys on social media now, they've set things up as well, where you can have your own merchandise with your last name on it and whatnot. All nice things. But the collective seems to be, and I'm far from not even being any bit of
I know. I don't understand it completely either, really, to be honest.
I'm not an expert on the collective or NIL at all, but that seems to be where the big money is, if you will. And again, I got to think Purdue's got a lot of smart people, and they're working on it as we speak. And maybe we'll hear something here in coming days, I'm sure. So, like Brian talked about earlier, boy, we talked off camera. There's a lot of, this is the great unknown right now. Well, where is this leading to? What's it going to look like in a year and 2 years? All we have is speculation. Now, right now, it seems like it's the wild, wild west, and it is the wild, wild west. So you got to get in the water and swim, though. You don't have to like it, but you got to do it. And Purdue knows that. And again, I'm sure Purdue will come up with something from a collective standpoint here sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Brian, last word on this, but go ahead as we put this to a close.
This needs to be more transparent long term, because there are people out there spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on recruits, and there are schools, from what I understand, that have millions of dollars in war chests for NIL money. There has to be some sort of product that comes out of this money, whether that's commercials, whether that's endorsements, whether that's whatever. If the NCAA ever comes out from under the bed on this, I think one of the important things that they do is create some sort of public directory of, okay, here's what these athletes are doing. Here's what they're getting paid for. That way, you at least know that this money is being used that's supposed to be used. Well, it isn't, because the NCAA's two guidelines were it's not a recruiting inducement and it's not a retention inducement, which is freaking hilarious, because that's exactly what it's been. But had they actually enforced anything from the start of this until now, had they not spent the 10 years prior to this happening fighting it instead of preparing for it, this might be very different. But if so-and-so is getting, $250,000 to go somewhere in NIL money, what are the people who spent their $250,000 getting out of it? Even if it's something cosmetic, there has to be some sort of light of day on this, where it's not just people just giving kids money or giving their families money. That's where there has to be some sort of, accountability in all of this. There has to be some sort of transparency in all of this. And the NCAA is involved, which the NCAA doesn't want to be involved. But once Power 5 and high major basketball break off here in a couple of years, as my guess is will happen, there have to be some guardrails in place on this, because this is, as I said before, this is the Burning Man of recruiting. This is just anything goes right now. And I'm kind of curious, how long can the market sustain this? Like, who are these people spending all this money? And how much longer can they do it? I always said that, you know, if the car dealership in Tuscaloosa wants to pay $500,000 to get Alabama a quarterback, well, great. But you still got to run a functional business. What's going on with these people, and how much longer can they spend this kind of money to do this? This might be a 2 or 3 or 4 year window here where it's just the Studio 54 part of this. And perhaps in a few years, this kind of normalizes to what, because the reality is that Duke is going to keep getting the best basketball players. You know, Purdue is going to keep getting better players than, you know, whoever, and everybody's going to keep getting better players in Illinois State and Wright State and whatnot. And competitively, you know, who knows what's even going to happen here in terms of whether this really changes the landscape of things. So if all these people buying players for Illinois or for Michigan or whoever it ends up being, if they don't see, you know, dramatic changes competitively, are they going to keep spending this kind of money on this stuff? I have no idea. Every day is a new day from here on out. We will find out as we go, I guess. But this is really a strange time right now.
I love the Studio 54 thing when I read it the other day.
Yeah. I mean, I do think, though, you've got boosters. I mean, this is where it gets nutty. Their boosters don't necessarily follow logical business plans by what their gifts to universities. I mean, I don't know. And you're right. Logically, this is going to get, you know, I listened to a couple of athletic directors this week talk about the fact that this may not be resolved for 2 or 3 years. I mean, you know, my gosh, you know, I mean, in terms of some guardrails, like you talked about, that's what's going to be.
What the hell is the NCAA doing right now?
Yeah, I
what
don't know.
Are they doing?
Don't know. And I don't know if they don't feel like they can, from a legal standpoint. I don't know. I have no idea. And that is a troubling thing. So I'm sure there'll be more of this discussion over the summer, and as we continue to dip our toes into this, it is going to be a continued storyline, not only at Purdue, but every other place in the Power 5, certainly. Mm-hmm. All right, guys, we will let everyone go for their holiday weekend. We appreciate Tom Dienhart and Brian Neubert for joining me, but also the Union Club Hotel, the Boiler Up Bar, 811 Bistro. We appreciate them as well. Have a great rest of your holiday. We'll be back next week with, I'm sure, some kind of spellbinding content to discuss. We never seem to have a problem doing that, but have a great week. Thanks for watching and listening. And Brian, you have the best way I never can recall, and how you process our material. No, what is it?
You're putting me on the spot here.
No, you say at the end of you say.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. Thank you for processing our materials. However it is you process our materials. Now, the problem I run into is sometimes those videos are really late at night and I'm really tired and I'm completely fried, and I don't pronunciate process very well. I do processing.
Right.
Which is obviously not a word. I have to go out of my way to over pronunciate the word processing.
Yeah. Well, all I know is it's come back to me from a couple of viewers that have said, you know, they like that term and they like that ability. It just puts it all in the right perspective. So,
well, good.
For that, that's a home run for you. There you go. So take that into your weekend. All right, guys, have a great rest of the weekend. And again, we'll look forward to next week in our Saturday Simulcast. Take care, everybody.